James Matthews, you are back. We've been lost without you. There's been no banter.
Oh, but well, very little banter at my end as well, I have to tell you, Mark, because I had my hip operation. Bit painful, bit stiff, bit sore, and there is more of me than there was before the op.
Go on. You're pulling my leg.
well, I tell you, they must have been pulling mine because my left leg, and hip operation people will know this, my left leg is an inch longer than my right now.
Oh, my goodness.
How about that?
We'll have to pull the other one.
Well, like a medieval torture. It's got to be cheaper than the op I had, I tell you.
I'm Mark Stone.
And I'm James Matthews.
And we're both in the Trump 100 studio here in Washington, D.C. And genuinely, James, it is great to have you back. We have missed you.
Well, thanks very much, Mark. Good to be with you once again. Today, we'll be talking Trump 2028. We've heard that one before. And, well, we're hearing it again from the man himself, the two-time president. Shows every sign of going for the hat trick. I would love to do it, he's saying.
But first, as Donald Trump treks through Asia, navigating a series of high-stakes meetings this week, at home, his administration is readying itself, maybe, to invade Venezuela. Before we get into all things Venezuela, though, just a note to say, if you like the podcast, do give us a follow. Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. And do leave a review as well. We always appreciate it. James, the most important question, surely, have you been listening to the podcast on your sickbed?
Well, yes, Mark, of course. And, you know, well, I mean, you were what? Where were you? Egypt, around the world, you know, selling the brand internationally. But amusingly, I have to say, of course, David Blevins, our much-loved friend and colleague, was doing the podcast. And it never ceases to amaze me how often people, I mean, newsreaders on Sky News will confuse David and me. And, you know, when I was off, sitting at home, elevating my leg, I was looking at Twitter and notification. And wouldn't you know it, there was like abuse of something that had been covered. James Matthews Sky, you know, making an absolute nonsense of this, etc., a critique of me. And I thought, well, hang on a minute, I'm off sick. That's clearly David Blevins.
Well, I wonder why that is.
Is that a baldest gag?
Yes.
Can't have that in the podcast. Anyway, on to the news. Venezuela, Mark. We've seen US forces striking boats in the Caribbean and Pacific taken out because the Americans say they were running drugs. Lots of questions around this, not least what happens next.
Yeah, it's a question that's got more relevant and more urgent over the course of the weekend. The US government has deployed the world's largest aircraft carrier and its associated battleships to the Caribbean just off the coast of Venezuela. It's going to take around about a week for the USS Gerald Ford to get to the Caribbean from its current location in the Mediterranean. But it's a big move. It was ordered by the Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth to deploy to the US South Command on Friday last week. That will add 5,000 military personnel to the 10,000 soldiers, sailors and aviators already deployed to the Caribbean.
Yeah, more than 40 people have been killed in recent weeks. Trump, he says they're neutralizing drug smugglers, stopping the flow of narcotics from South America into the United States. The administration routinely posts on social media footage of these boats being obliterated. Now, this is all bypassing Congress. And Trump has said he can't imagine, in his words, lawmakers having any problem with it. Well, some very much do, and they are asking, where is the evidence that these people being taken out are what Donald Trump says they are? Rand Paul, a Republican senator, he's called this extrajudicial killings. And many others are saying, look, if these are drug boats, stop them, make an arrest, follow due process. So that's where the discussion has been. It developed over the weekend when Senator Lindsey Graham, a man not a million miles away from Donald Trump, he said in an interview that strikes on land were a real possibility.
Yeah, but Lindsey Graham, unlike his colleague Rand Paul, has shown no sign so far of any concern over the lack of congressional oversight for these presidential actions. On the face of it, as you say, it is a drugs war. Trump's focus is to hit supply countries and to hit them hard. And that is where he is taking his justification from, the idea that he is defending the homeland, stopping drugs from reaching the United States. And for now, for his supporters in Congress, where the Republicans obviously have the majority, they are buying that justification. There is a problem, though, with it, because the biggest challenge for America when it comes to drugs is fentanyl. And very, very little, if any, fentanyl actually comes from Venezuela. A lot of cocaine comes into the United States from places like Venezuela, but not fentanyl. So the justification gets a little bit woolly there. The president did say over the course of the weekend that he would, quote, probably go back to Congress and explain exactly what we're doing before launching land strikes. But he added, we don't have to do that. We don't have to go back to Congress. And here's the other thing, James, about deploying an aircraft carrier and thousands more sailors and soldiers. They are not remotely suited to stopping drug smuggling, but they are a vital element of any planned ground or air war. And so I think this is about much more than drugs. Instead, the Trump administration is looking much more like they are preparing to push for a form of regime change in Venezuela.
Yeah, that country's opposition leader, Maria Corina Machado, she's the woman who pipped Trump to the Nobel Peace Prize a few weeks ago. She said that she's grateful for Donald Trump's actions in the region. She lost the last election in Venezuela to the current dictator, Nicolas Maduro. The results are broadly considered to have been rigged to ensure that Maduro stayed in power. He's no friend, of course, of Donald Trump. Trump reckons he's in the pocket of gangs like Tren de Aragua. And for a US president seeking to grow his influence over that region as much as he is anywhere else, he wants and needs a Venezuela that he feels he can control and rely on. And with Maduro in power, that's not the case.
Yeah, and that's not all. The world's largest oil reserves are, you guessed it, in Venezuela. There was a time decades ago when America siphoned huge quantities of Venezuelan oil. The port refineries in places like Texas were literally built to refine Venezuelan crude. If Trump has someone in power that is sympathetic to him and he gets his hand on vast oil resources in Venezuela, it would enormously boost America's economy.
Yeah, the Americans seem to be beating the war drums right enough. Trump, he's already said that the CIA has been authorized to conduct covert operations on the ground in Venezuela. And the Venezuelans, well, they're conducting military exercises on their Caribbean coast, currently being broadcast on repeat on state TV.
Yeah, and if you're wondering how all this fits into Trump's peacemaking president framing, how it fits into his America First world vision, well, it actually kind of fits quite neatly because Trump sees the world in spheres of influence and control. He said this before, and the Western Hemisphere is the American sphere, his sphere to control. And having access to the Venezuelan oil market would be a key America First objective. Stopping the flow of drugs into America is clearly another. And achieving peace in the Middle East, if he's done that, or if he thinks he might very, very soon, that allows him to redeploy troops away from the Middle East. In fact, the aircraft carrier, the Gerald R. Ford, is on its way to the Caribbean only because it was able to leave the Middle East because of the ceasefire in Gaza and the degrading of Iran as a threat. So the objective clearly is the removal of Maduro. The hope, I think, is that an internal coup can be enabled with the help of the opposition leader and others, and the help of the CIA, who they now say are already on the ground. But American troops on the ground in Venezuela is possible, maybe even probable. Some might say it's good old-fashioned imperialism.
Yeah, you talk about the peacemaker president, as he would style himself, and this mantra, peace through strength. Donald Trump likes that, but this does rather smack of peace through strength as exercised against the little guy, battering Venezuela to demonstrate a muscularity that perhaps Donald Trump needs and doesn't exercise in more challenging spheres, like with Russia, like with China. So we'll see. But in terms of the practicalities in Venezuela, it's claiming it's captured a group of mercenaries with what it says is direct information of the American intelligence agency. Basically, it says the Americans are there and running around trying to lay the ground for further military action, perhaps. It's not the only country, of course, in Trump's sights as he looks south. Colombia's president, Gustavo Petro, he's been sanctioned by the US Secretary of State Marco Rubio, accused of appeasing and emboldening narco-terrorists.
And the only problem in Colombia is a lunatic president. The guy's a lunatic. He's a lunatic. And he's not well. And everybody knows he's very unpopular in Colombia. I don't know if you saw today, the Colombian Congress voted, I think it was like 72-20, to designate the Venezuelan regime as a narco-terrorist organization. So it just shows you, it's unfortunate the people of Colombia have to deal with this guy until May of next year. But nonetheless, I don't have any news for you on exactly what our strategy is going to be. We wouldn't announce that on the ground, but I can tell you we have partners on the ground.
Now, meanwhile, Donald Trump is in Tokyo on his way to meet Chinese President Xi Jinping in a big showdown between the two big world superpowers.
Yeah, before he made his way to Japan, he was in Malaysia for a summit meeting the 10 Southeast Asian states, ASEAN, a collection of countries crucial to the US economically. As a bloc, they are its fourth largest trading partner, and Trump's looking to strengthen relations. His dance card is pretty full on this trip, but he has left a space for an old friend. He says he's 100% open to a meeting with North Korea's Kim Jong-un, but there's been no answer back from Pyongyang on that one.
Yeah, watch this space. I mean, as you say, it's not set at the moment, but things happen at the very last minute, and it's perfectly possible that Donald Trump could end up doing what he did last time when he was in the Korean Peninsula and walking across the DMZ, as it's known, the DMZ, the demilitarized zone that splits North and South Korea, to meet Kim Jong-un. That would be a moment if it happens.
Yeah, quite the photo opportunity at that time. But of course, on the politics, Kim Jong-un showed him two fingers, didn't he? The plan had been reduce your nuclear weapons. Kim Jong-un said, well, hold my beer, and absolutely did not. He's got a massive nuclear arsenal, which grew on the back of Trump's visit.
And he is now, Kim Jong-un is now much closer to China and to Russia as well. So maybe not the optics Donald Trump is looking for.
Yeah, but in terms of the people he is engaging with, he's met Japan's emperor, the new Japanese prime minister, but it's all really the undercard for the main event, which will take place in South Korea on Thursday, a meeting with the Chinese leader Xi Jinping.
Yeah, it is an astonishing schedule that Donald Trump has got. 79 years old, and yet he's flying around the world. I mean, I know, in style, of course. In Air Force
Some man for one man.
Yeah, of course. And, he's getting his sleep. But still, jet lag, it affects everyone. I mean, hats off to the guy. It's an extraordinary schedule. And as he got off the plane in Malaysia, he seemed to be in very good spirits. Did you see the dancing?
I did. What did you make of it?
Well, it was the Malaysians put on their version of the Trump dance, and he reacted.
And I have to say, Mark, I didn't like it. Listen, it's one thing if you're a dad, if you're that age, waving the arms around a bit. But see when you start engaging other parts of the body, you can tell he's thinking, I'm actually pretty good at this. When all anybody else is thinking is, sit down, mate, give it a rest.
My children are doing the Trump dance now. They walk around doing this,
and you join in. I take it.
I know I don't, but when YMCA comes on in our house or in the car, which it does sometimes on the Spotify playlist, they dance.
I think your parental duty is to join in, Mark, and to video it.
Okay, fine.
We'll play it next week.
Deal. The next episode, we'll have my children doing the Trump dance. Anyway, James, beyond the dancing on the tarmac in Malaysia, the real business is the meeting with China's Xi Jinping. It's crucial for the US and China and for the world. There is no more important bilateral relationship in the world than that between the American and Chinese leaders. It impacts every one of us: trade, security, climate, the lot.
Yeah, the pair haven't met in 6 years, and it wasn't whiskey and cigars then. Trump was fighting a trade war with the Chinese in his first term. And that hostility, has been a thread throughout their relations ever since. In recent days, Trump has been threatening an additional 100% tariff on imported Chinese goods. That was because the Chinese were saying they would restrict the export of rare earth materials. So it was all shaping up as something of a standoff, but that seems to have eased. The US Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, he's been involved in talks with the Chinese in advance of this meeting on Thursday, and the chill, well, it seems to have warmed.
Yeah, it's interesting, actually, just thinking about it, the way that Trump kind of works these geopolitical relationships often, and we've seen it with the peace deal in the Middle East and all the rest of things, is to forget about the sort of subsidiaries talks and actually just cut to the chase. The leaders talk and hammer out a deal. But with China, it does appear that they're doing it the old-fashioned way, and you have those underneath Xi Jinping and underneath Donald Trump, Scott Bessent for Trump, doing these preliminary meetings, trying to build the ground for the leaders to meet. It's quite a traditional and un-Trumpy way of doing things, I think. And Scott Bessent has said that his meetings in the region have set the stage for a framework agreement between the two leaders. It will form a tariff truce, we're told. The Chinese will resume purchase of American soybeans. China is America's biggest customer when it comes to soybeans and the soybean industry, as we've found out, and I've travelled across the Midwest talking to farmers over the past year. They are absolutely reliant on China buying their soybeans, so it's a big issue. Beyond that, a year-long pause on rare earth restrictions is expected, and a final deal on the sale of TikTok in the United States. So those are the sort of background chats that Scott Bessent has been having in order to prepare the ground for the two leaders to meet. But it does all sound quite temporary, a framework to allow the two sides to keep talking, essentially, rather than a comprehensive trade agreement, which clearly is the ultimate ambition. And we know that without comprehensive agreements, the chances are that one side or the other rips it all up on a whim, as with Canada, James.
Yeah, the whim of Donald Trump, because as we know, it's one thing, Scott Bessent and the Sherpas doing all the hard graft, but it all comes down to Donald Trump in the end. He's the guy who will plant the flag, and only if it suits him. There are variables to consider, not least the sensitivity of the man. And, this Canada thing, that's all about an advert that was aired by the government of Ontario. It included a clip of Ronald Reagan, ex-US president, and his thoughts on tariffs. Of course, he took a dim view.
When someone says, let's impose tariffs on foreign imports, it looks like they're doing the patriotic thing by protecting American products and jobs. And sometimes for a short while it works, but only for a short time. But over the long run, such trade barriers hurt every American worker and consumer. High tariffs inevitably lead to retaliation by foreign countries and the triggering of fierce trade wars. Then the worst happens. Markets shrink and collapse, businesses and industries shut down, and millions of people lose their jobs. Throughout the world, there's a growing realization that the way to prosperity for all nations is rejecting protectionist legislation and promoting fair and free competition. America's jobs and growth are at stake.
Trump was furious about that, claiming it was fake. It wasn't. And it didn't stop the ad being aired during the Baseball World Series, Toronto Blue Jays versus the Los Angeles Dodgers. Trump, he promptly increased tariffs on Canada by 10%, and he ended the trade talks.
Yeah, Reagan's words were not fake, but they were somewhat spliced together. The order of the sections of the speech were changed in the Canadian advert. But the Ronald Reagan Presidential Foundation, they said that the advertisement had used selective audio and video, and that it misrepresented what Reagan had said in the address. I have to say, James, I've listened to both the original speech and the ad, and it seems quite clear to me that he wasn't misrepresented in the advertisement. He was very much in favour of free trade. He saw tariffs as a last resort. He did incidentally impose 100% tariffs on some Japanese goods while he was in office back in the early 1980s. But he only did that because of what he saw were blatantly unfair trading practices. And generally, he was a reluctant user of tariffs. Reagan is to the Republicans what Maggie Thatcher is to Conservatives in the UK. And the ad, I think, James, kind of invokes an old Republican hero whose economic policies are clearly very different to those of President Trump. And I suppose the contradictions don't really sit very well with Donald Trump. But you know what? It was only the other day that Mark Carney was here, the Canadian Prime Minister. It was 3 weeks ago. They were sitting next to each other at the White House, all smiles. It can turn on a dime, can't it? And an ad that the president just doesn't like. Now, James, what do you reckon the chances are that President Trump will run for a third term?
I would say no, for a number of reasons. But if you ask him, I think he'd say there's every chance.
What are the number of reasons then?
Well, principally because I don't think that the Republicans, the people who put Donald Trump where he is now, the MAGA base, the money men, I don't think they will see Donald Trump as a man who in 3 years' time will deliver for them.
And also, there are those who are around him who, while they will never admit it at the moment, they are circling, whether it's Marco Rubio, whether it's J.D. Vance.
Yeah.
They want the job as well.
Yeah, and people who put, there's a lot of money and a lot of influence behind J.D. Vance, for example, people who wanted him in that vice presidential slot with a view to 2028. So I think whatever Donald Trump wants, I think there are big forces behind him saying, look, mate, take a step down. We've got plans, and they aren't plans for you.
Yeah, it hasn't stopped him being asked about the issue, and he clearly relishes the idea that it's being discussed. Have a listen to this.
Sir, Steve Bannon said in a recent interview that there could be plans for you to be able to run and potentially win a third term in 2028. Is that something you'd be willing to challenge the court to be?
Well, I haven't really thought about it. We have some very good people, as you know, but I have the best poll numbers I've ever had. I mean, I just solved 8 wars, and a 9th is coming. I believe Russia-Ukraine will happen.
You said that for 2028, there are very good people.
Well, we have great people. Well, I don't have to get into that, but we have one of them standing right here. We have J.D., obviously. The vice president is great. I think Marco's great. I think, I'm not sure if anybody would run against us. I think if they ever formed a group, it would be unstoppable. I really do. I believe that. I would love to do it. I have my best numbers ever. It's very terrible. I have my best numbers. If you read it, am I not ruling it out? I mean, you'll have to tell me. All I can tell you is that we have a great group of people, which they don't. They have Jasmine.
Yeah, that was Trump on Air Force One as he's jetting around Asia.
Yeah, there's been a lot of talk about this, the third Trump term. On the face of it, it would go against the Constitution, the 22nd Amendment, which dictates nobody can be elected president more than twice. Now, Steve Bannon, remember him, Mark?
Oh, yeah.
Trump's one-time election guru, White House aide, before it all went sour. Well, they've evidently made up because Bannon is banging this drum for a third Trump term. He's been grabbing headlines again for telling The Economist that there's a plan to get round the law as we understand it and as America has respected it. Bannon is saying he'll lay it out at the appropriate time and that Trump will be president in 2028.
Well, he's going to get a third term. So Trump 28, Trump is going to be president in 28, and people just ought to get accommodated with that.
So what about the 22nd Amendment?
There's many different alternatives. At the appropriate time, we'll lay out what the plan is, but there's a plan, and President Trump will be the president in 28. We had longer odds in 16 and longer odds in 24 than we got in 28. And President Trump will be the president of the United States, and the country needs him to be president of the United States. We have to finish what we started.
Yeah, I don't want to burst The Economist's bubble, and objectively, The Economist's editor did a fantastic interview there. I thought she pushed him very, very hard on this idea. But anyone who's been listening to Steve Bannon over the past 6 months would know that he's been saying this over and over again. He absolutely believes that Donald Trump will run again and that he stands a very good chance of winning again. And he seems to be suggesting, as you heard there, that there are many ways of getting round the constitutional block. He's not the only one, incidentally, pushing this idea. Congressman Andy Ogles from Tennessee, who has proposed legislation in Congress that would amend the Constitution to allow a president to serve 3 terms or 2 consecutive terms. That opens the door for someone like Trump, who has a gap between his 2 terms, to serve another 4 years as president. He'd be 82 at the time of the next election in 2028, not to mention we now know that he had an MRI scan when he had his last medical a week or so ago. That's not standard practice unless there's cause for concern about his health. Now, the White House has not said there is any cause for concern, but they have revealed that he had this MRI. It's not stopping his supporters, though, from laying the groundwork for Trump to disrupt the status quo in America once again.
Yeah, that business of his age, Mark. Looking at his performance, I think that's an issue, actually, when you look at Donald Trump these days, these endless speeches and the reputation, which I think for many people is starting to look a bit Biden-esque in a country that's burned, I think, by the Biden experience, that kind of failure to notice his failings in his final years in office. I think that would be a central issue around, I think, electability, certainly. But Andy Ogles, you mentioned him, the Nashville congressman. I've actually interviewed him before. He's the congressman who posted a family picture on social media with his kids holding assault rifles by the Christmas tree. And this was at a time when there had been a mass shooting in his district. I mean, he deleted the picture. But at the time, I caught up with him, asked him if he regretted posting the picture. And in his answer, he spoke about the fundamental liberty of our constitutional republic. At that time, he seemed quite happy to invoke the Constitution then at a time when it suited him. And I do think this business of the Constitution, I think we're learning over Trump 2.0 about its vulnerabilities. It's being tested on a regular basis by his administration. And I think we're finding out about its resilience as Trump pushes the boundaries, fights in court against norms and understandings that have held for centuries. And of course, it's all heading to a Supreme Court that leans his way ideologically. So you have to ask, what is the Constitution worth when it gets to that Supreme Court that is largely appointed by Donald Trump? And as all this takes place, I think we get an understanding that the Constitution, as laid out by the founding fathers, it comes down really to consent, a common understanding amongst the people at any given time. And that's not existing, a common understanding in the way that it has done through generations in this country. And I think Donald Trump, he's exploiting that fact.
In a weird way, I think that kind of gets to the heart of what Steve Bannon's point is, because he's saying we'll find a way to make this happen. He suggests that if a majority of the country want Trump to remain president, well, then he should. To which the response is, well, he's not allowed to because of the Constitution. To which Trump supporters then say, but if a Democratic majority wants him to, then why shouldn't he? Yeah. And so on and so on. You can kind of see where it goes. Another avenue which Trump has floated himself is to do a Putin. He, of course, stepped down as president to become prime minister, then to return as president after one term as prime minister. That got him round the Russian constitution. Trump could, some suggest, become vice president for one term and then return to the presidency. He could do that, he told reporters, but it's just too cute. What does that mean?
I think a lot of people would find it just too ugly.
Yeah, it's also not, not constitutionally allowed. The 12th Amendment of the Constitution states that anyone who is ineligible to run for president is also ineligible to run for vice president.
Yeah, apart from anything else, Mark, it's quite the cast of characters, isn't it? Donald Trump and Steve Bannon, old pals, old lags, of course. Both of them have got convictions. Bannon, he spent time in jail after he refused a deposition before a congressional committee. And, last seen coming out of the jail with his belongings in a plastic bin liner. And, look at them both now. Trump in the White House, Bannon very much a player again, influential in the MAGA movement. And, if both were to engineer a third Trump term, the resurrection would be complete.
It's great to have you back after your hip operation.
Yeah, thanks. And the best thing about the hip operation, Mark?
Go on.
I was able to thank the nurse who saved my life. Because as you know...
As I know, but as listeners do not.
Well, the hip operation was my second attempt. The first time, I had a disagreement with the nerve block anaesthetic.
Yeah, listeners, hold on tight, because this is one hell of a story. He's going to tell it now.
Yeah, a disagreement with the nerve block to the extent that my heart stopped for 30 seconds. Cardiac arrest. I just remember coming round, the sea of faces around the bed, shouting my name, looking really scared.
This is the first time you went in, and then it was all aborted because your heart stopped.
Well, exactly, yeah. But, that day, that time, the nurse who'd been prepping me, she was the one who gave me compressions and brought me back. And I just remember her leaning over and saying, "I got you," which I thought, oh, great. But then she disappeared, and I thought, oh, hang on, she just saved my life. And I didn't even get the chance to say thanks. So I went in for the second time, And there she was. "We meet again," she said. And of course, I told her the story about how, first time, thank you very much.
Thank you very much for saving my life.
Well, I said to her, thanks very much. I mean, that meant a lot to, a few people. And I said, I've been telling that story about what happened, and, the punchline being you leaning over, telling me, "I got you." And she says, "Well, Mr. Matthews, I got you again." Which I thought was cool reassurance.
James, when you first told me that story, and I said, "Hey, God, that's crazy." He goes, "Do you know what he said?" He said, "Mark, you haven't lived till you've died." That's my terrible Scottish accent. Great line.
Oh, yeah. Well, listen, good to be back. Good to see you, Mark. And thank you very much for listening. Thoughts and questions, do send them to us at trump100@sky.uk as ever. We're always grateful to hear them.
Yeah, thanks a lot. And we will see you tomorrow. Bye-bye for now.
All the best.